And welcome back to the Spicy Sports Show with Sam Cerrone, coming to you live from Portland, Oregon. It is 12:44 on the West Coast. No Tommy here this week. He is out shopping for couches. He got a new house, as we know, a couple weeks ago. So I'm excited. I'm going to get to go see him in September. So 2 months from now, very excited about that. But I'm sorry I've just been inconsistent with this podcasting. It's just been so busy. I've been sick, just on and off. A lot of things in the way. But now that we have some time, NBA pretty much the entire podcast. I mean, you have some football stuff, which I'm going to interject in what's been this ridiculous free agency for the NBA. We knew the salary cap was going to go up, and these ridiculous contracts are getting even more ridiculous, just because that's the market value that's presented right now. I mean, you see all these players. We knew that Gordon Hayward was going to get a max deal wherever. We knew Kevin Durant was going to take pretty good money, but considering he wants to be as part of a championship nucleus and continue to win championships, he took less money. And we'll talk about his contract as well. Chris Paul, the Clippers, they're on their way down. The Timberwolves on their way up. After all this, and again, we still have a lot of free agents left out there as to what their next moves are. But what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to rank them 1 through 8, East and West, where they're going to be at based off what they've done, and of course the draft, some early summer league talk. Again, it's not that it's going to project into what we see. I mean, we saw Markelle Fultz play pretty well. Jason Tatum is a really good athlete, and clutch is from what we saw in the opener against Philadelphia, and what a game that was to watch it. Again, summer league, but still, it's very fascinating to just see what their potential can be, because again, that's all we have right now is potential. And then, of course, Lonzo Ball's not so great performance to start out his NBA career. Again, and just in the preseason, but if that's the indicator, that's a pretty that's not good. So, again, thank you so much for listening. We finally hit 1,000 hits. It's been a while since I brought this back. I think I started bringing this back. Podcast back in 2015 in January. 87 episodes. This is number 88. And so we finally hit the 1,000 mark last week. And so I'm really excited. Unfortunately, we're not going to do anything. Again, with Tommy not being here, we're not going to go do anything crazy. I'm just going to go straight into it and what has been this ridiculous free agency so far. You have Kevin Durant, yes. He signed a 2-year, $53 million contract with Golden State. No surprise there. He was going to stay in Golden State. He was the best player on the team that won in the finals. He finally made it to where this is his home. This is where he wanted to be when he decided he looked at what the landscape was. He looked at his options because he was a free agent. He looked at his options. Of course, you had OKC. You had some other suitors. Also, you had the Wizards, of course, his hometown back in D.C. Last offseason. That was a great pitch. And, of course, his old coach from OKC was there as well. And then you had Golden State, a team who won 73 games, but came up short in the NBA Finals, whether, one way or the year before, one way or another. This is a team that had the ability to add another piece in Kevin Durant, in which they did. And we saw what they were able to do. It took maybe a little bit, some time to mesh, but that's what you do when you add arguably the second or third best player in the league. You could interchange them daily between LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry. I mean, for me, that's where the top three players in the world are right now. You have LeBron. A lot of people say he's number one just based off what he has to do for his team to win. His athleticism, his whole work over the course of his career. You could see him being the number one player right now. Kevin Durant, he ascended himself into that space with the wonderful performance in the NBA Finals, and of course Steph Curry, 2 MVPs, 2 NBA championships in 3 years, with another one probably going to happen next year. He's doing pretty well for himself. And then, of course, Steph Curry's contract as well. Let's talk about that. $40 million per season over the next 5 years, $201 million in total when it's all said and done. when he signed his contract, his previous contract, I think that was back in 2013, was a 4-year, $44 million contract. That was a pretty good deal for up to that point because you saw his injuries, you saw the potential, but you weren't sure whether the health was going to be there. And then, of course, he was a pretty good shooter. Steph Curry has revolutionized the game now. You see all these teams now are trying to mimic what Golden State is. The league is a copycat league. And everyone's trying to mimic Golden State. I can take an example here for those soccer fans. When Chelsea came back this season, they didn't play as well the season before. They finished in 10th, again, top half of the table of the EPL, but they were champions the 2 years ago, and then last year just stunk it up. And then at that point, Antonio Conte comes in for Chelsea, and he changes the back line to a three in the back 4-3 formation with a couple wingbacks, and everyone started to mimic that type of formation in the English Premier League because it proved to be successful en route to another English Premier League championship for Chelsea. Now you translate this to the NBA, you see a team like Golden State that is very passing oriented. Again, you have your superstars in Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, of course now Kevin Durant. Draymond is the nitty gritty type of player. Again, undersized, but for this NBA it works just because again he's very athletic and can dish it out to any of those guys that can shoot the three. A lot of teams are trying to mimic that now. You saw what the Houston Rockets were able to do this season under Mike D'Antoni, and Mike D'Antoni, give him a lot of credit for this past season. Yes, they didn't play so well against San Antonio when, honestly, they probably should have won Game 6. No Kawhi. Again, a lot of players injured, and for some reason the Rockets weren't able to put it together. But during the course of the season, they set the record for most threes in an NBA season, which passed the Warriors, which is hard to believe, in NBA history for a season. And other teams are trying to mimic that slowly but surely. And again, it's Golden State right now. Golden State's the top of the mountain. Everyone's trying to compete with them. You have Cleveland as number 2, and they're continuing to add pieces. I saw that they re-signed Korver. Jefferson's going to be re-signed. Richard Jefferson's going to be re-signed. They just brought in Jeff Green on a minimal contract. We'll see how that turns out for them. But they're just trying to keep up with Golden State, which is going to be a very difficult task considering what they were already able to do this past season. And what we've seen in this draft, and not just the draft, but free agency, a lot of players are going from the East, and it seems that they're giving up the Eastern Conference to LeBron. It just seems that that's the case. You see the star power going to the West. Paul George heading from Indiana to OKC via trade. Again, Indiana getting back Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo. Again, I don't like that move for Indiana just because I feel like there were other offers on the table. But with Paul George already saying, hey, I'm going to be gone in a year and I'm not going to re-sign with the Pacers, I'm going to LA. It kind of puts a bind on what Indiana was able to do because not many teams are going to be willing to part ways with a lot of good pieces and draft picks for a 1-year rental when it's almost for a fact that Paul George is I'd say 99.9% he's going to LA. And what OKC gave up for him, it wasn't a lot. I thought Sabonis was a good piece. Oladipo, again, a very athletic player, been in the league a couple of years, but you could part ways with him to see what this partnership will be like in another similar smaller market, but in the Western Conference where you could see Russell Westbrook and Paul George. Again, Paul George is going to be taking a lot of the scoring that Durant had when he was there, and he'll play very well. And I think that'll be an interesting dynamic. I don't think Westbrook will get another triple-double season like he did this past season. I think he had to do that because that was the only way his team could win games. I don't know exactly what the win-loss ratio was, but I think it was 3 times as many wins as losses when Westbrook got a triple-double. So it was very obvious that he needed to play to the expectation of, I need to do everything in order for us to win. But with Paul George coming to OKC, that makes a big difference. And then you have Jimmy Butler in the draft day trade to the Timberwolves, going from Chicago to Minnesota. How that's going to work out, that's going to be huge. On top of that, you have Jeff Teague, who is still, I think he hasn't hit his ceiling yet, but he's a really good player. The nucleus that you have and what you gave up for that wasn't really much. I mean, you swapped draft picks. You gave away Zach LaVine coming off a catastrophic knee injury, and you're just giving up pieces that, quite frankly, you're okay with parting. So the lineup that you have with Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, Jimmy Butler, and Jeff Teague, that's pretty intriguing in the West. And considering some teams, again, the West there's no doubt about it, the West is a much stronger conference than the East. That's pretty obvious. But it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. It's almost not even fair. I think you're going to see the East come in. I think the 7th, 8th seed in the East are probably going to have losing records heading into the playoffs. That's how bad I think the Eastern Conference will be this upcoming season. And in the West, you're probably going to need 43, 44 wins just to get into the playoffs. I mean, and you look at these teams, we're in a time now, and I think we've always been in this time, but I think teams are now starting to realize this. You're going to need 3 star players to win an NBA championship. That's what you're going to need. And with that being said, you look at how the teams are structured. Let's go through the standings from this past season, as is right now. Boston, they just got Gordon Hayward, who, again, we'll talk about in a second, but Boston made themselves better in a way, and then unfortunately, they had to give up some pieces in order to make that happen. Cleveland, they already have their nucleus of 3 with Love, Kyrie, and LeBron, but of course, Love being the odd man out, it seems at this point. What's Cleveland's next move? With Toronto, you have that backcourt in Kyle Lowry, DeRozan. Is it possible that they can try to get a third piece? Because they're pretty athletic, and they're a pretty good team as is. Again, they've lost some pieces in the offseason, but if you can continue to at least keep that backcourt together, they look pretty good there. The Wizards, I mean, it's funny that we mentioned the Wizards, I guess. Otto Porter Jr., the type of player that he is right now. He's continuing to develop, I think, in his 3rd, 4th season in the league. He's only averaging about 13 points a game, but he's improved season by season. And the Kings, the Sacramento Kings, who I've praised up to this point before Otto Porter, I think they've made some good moves. They gave him a max deal. 4 years, $100+ million contract. Think about that. A player who's averaging 13 points a game is going to be making $25 million per season. Why? Because that's what the market dictates, apparently. It's pretty ridiculous. It's ridiculous that type of player who's